All right, what is up, everybody? So, I just want to talk about the developer workshops that came out last week. So, a little late to this, but I was on travel for some personal stuff, so wasn't able to cover this at the time. I did look it over. I think overall, the changes that are coming look really, 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 really promising. So, starting off with the Inaros rework. So, obviously, you can just go read these yourselves. You don't need me to do that for you. I just kind of wanted to provide my thoughts on the upcoming changes. So, I think it's cool. There's still Inaros has always had. I mean, for a long time, this was kind of like his only identity outside of just having a lot of health. He did always have some kind of synergy with melee finishers, like back in the day with the old version of covert lethality, where daggers would one shot anything with a finisher. That was kind of like the meta with an Aros. You would desiccate, and this was before Helminth was out and stuff, so it was really easy to trigger melee finishers with an Aros. Can't really do that anymore, but there are some weapons that are still pretty good as finishers. I'm interested to try like Inodam on him. Maybe uh like Destreza Prime, because Destreza is pretty sure rapiers are one of the only weapons with a guaranteed slash proc on finishers. So that might be fun to mess around with. Maybe even like marked for death on Aros with Destreza Prime. Like I could see like the new Sandstorm, high ranged, marked for death. You desiccate, proc a finisher with marked for death. You apply slash to a whole. Like I could see some cool stuff. So I think there's definitely going to be a lot of builds you can try out. With the newer version of Anaros. So desiccation is basically the same thing. So not really worth talking about. Devour was like such a bad ability. It was it was honestly one, I think the only thing competing with Devour for being such a bad ability was Caliban's Razor Gyre or whatever it's called. His one is super bad. So Devour was pretty awful. And frankly Sandstorm wasn't great either. Like I have a ton of I've tried for a long time to make a Sandstorm build and it just was not working. Um, so yeah, I think I think it's really good that they reworked this ability. I'm really glad it's just a duration rather than a channeled ability. I think that that's like it's just going to be better for like the flow of combat and because like anytime something's a channeled ability, I feel like it just really promotes like degenerate behavior. It's like, oh, well, I could just stay in the sandstorm form like all the time. I kind of like the whole like, oh, you sandstorm to scoop enemies up. You can ground finisher them if you want, blah blah blah. So this feels much, 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 much better. I'm curious to see like if the sandstorm augment is going to be in the game still, or if like well, and I know that it's still going to be in the game, but like how it functionally works with Sandstorm, because right now it's got some pretty weird interactions, but it does kind of work as like a status primer. Sandstorm's biggest problem right now is it's like the old tornadoes where they would just throw things all over the place. This is much more like the newer Zephyr tornadoes, and if you can use the Sandstorm augment to kind of like prime enemies with status effects. So for anybody who doesn't know, the Sandstorm augment makes your Sandstorm damage apply your weapon's elemental or like status effects. So I think it goes off of your melee weapon. Um, so if you have your weapon like viral heat, maybe like has some IPS on there, that could kind of be a nice primer for condition overload. Or you could like use this with maybe like explosive weapon, or I guess explosive weapons don't benefit from condition overload, but either way, I think that there's like it's certainly a much better ability than Devour and a much better ability than the older version of Sandstorm. So I think that the fact that I'm even thinking about pressing Sandstorm's button is a massive improvement over where it was. Um, Now this is where it gets pretty crazy. I think these changes are really incredible. So one, Inaros's 4 was always good. The augment that made his 4, his old 4, so his Scarab Shell, his old 4 give you status immunity. It was really nice. Like status immunity is a really powerful tool to have in Warframe. One, it makes your modding way easier because you don't need to use Prime Surefooted. You don't need to use Unairu. So it opens up possibilities for your builds a lot when you're able to have status immunity. Plus, like a lot of the effects that do a ton of damage at higher levels aren't necessarily like direct damage. It's like heat procs or toxin procs. Those do like insane amounts of damage. So not even having to deal with those, like you still have to deal with the upfront damage, but not the status effect. So I think that is it's really nice that this is baseline because it just makes modding for him even easier. Also, the armor getting a baseline increase, scaling with strength. That's awesome because Anaros has so much HP, so any increase in armor is a massive increase to his effective health. Also, like just the fact that you can move while you're using this is like really nice because it was. I mean, Warframe is such a fast-paced game, so when you're bullet jumping around, you're like going crazy. It really stinks when you would have to like, oh, my Scarab Swarm is low, and like you'd have to stop, hold the ability, charge it up on yourself, and then you could like keep going. This looks so much smoother, like you just boom, charge it up while you're moving. You just keep going with the mission. I mean, yeah, you're not moving as fast, but whatever. Also, it looks really cool. Okay, now this is where I think it gets really good. So you don't need to cast health or use health, which honestly doesn't really matter. I think this is so cool that they are leaning in to um leaning into the whole like Anaros has a lot of health thing. Um Now this is my big question is, do these scarabs just do corrosive damage, or do they also apply the corrosive status effect? Because if they also apply the corrosive status effect, then that's pretty huge. Because I mean, everybody knows like emerald shards are kind of if you have a very easy way, like Saren is the best example, right? Like obviously Saren is insanely strong regardless, but if you have emerald shards on Saren and she's just full armor stripping everything at high levels, there's a really like enemies at high level on Steel Path have so much armor that having stripping 80% of their armor versus 100% is a massive difference in their effective health. So, emerald shards are awesome, and if you can combine emerald shards with Scarab Swarm, and if this applies the corrosive status effect, that is going to be absolutely insane. So I also really like that because like Kavats were like a part of like his quest and stuff. So I really like that you get these swarm Kavats. That's really cool. I think this is just like a lot of good flavor. So there's a couple augment changes. So Elemental Sandstorm is not being changed. So if it works the same way, this might actually be a pretty good uh augment. Um, I don't think this is going to be worth using, frankly. Um, this like might be okay. Like I guess this is kind of like a way for Anaros to scale into like endurance runs. Um, I guess we'll have to see like how strong this bleed is, and if you can like status cleanse it off somehow. Um, like if you combine this with like worm and like the negation precept, will that take this off, or can you not take off this status effect? Right? Because like I get what they're trying to do. Like they don't want Anaros to just be like Wukong, original Wukong, or kind of how Revenant is now, frankly, where like you have an ability and you can't die. Like that's honestly like I'm kind of surprised Revenant hasn't been changed because that was one of the biggest reasons they changed old Wukong. And if we're all being honest with ourselves, new Revenant is basically or Revenant right now is basically meta he's basically like old Wukong, right? Like you used to press Defy, and as long as you had your build set up right, you literally couldn't die. And now with Revenant, you press, you press Mesmer Skin and you can't die. And I feel like most people, I like the rest of, I think Mesmer Skin is his most boring ability. I really like the rest of his kit. I know a lot of people just play Revenant for Mesmer Skin. And it makes you wonder, like, if Helminth had existed back when old Wukong was around, would they have ever reworked Wukong? Or would it have just been like, like he can't die because of Defy, but he can put other cool stuff on his build because of Helminth? Obviously that's theoretical, but it makes you wonder. So I will, we'll see if this augment is good. I don't think this one will be worth using. Obviously, I'm going to try all these out, but and then Elemental Sandstorm, I genuinely think might be pretty good. So the biggest question mark by far is this corrosive status effect. If it is, and you have, you're like throwing out scarabs and you're, stripping it, everything's armor, and you got these Kavats running around applying your swarm and stripping armor, like that could be really powerful. Um, so we'll have to see though. I think overall this looks absolutely amazing. I think they did a really good job as always. They've been, anytime there's been a rework lately, it seems like they have done an extremely good job. Um, I'm a little biased because she's one of my favorite frames, but I kind of hope that Ember gets some quality of life changes because back when Ember got reworked, it was when they were on this kick about like trying to stop power creep. And so Ember's rework was definitely a big improvement, but it also has some like this rework has some like negatives, right? So it's like, oh, like his passive, right? Like yeah, like you can technically live forever and come back, but like every time you die and you try to come back, it's harder, right? So like that's okay. Like I like that design. Or like with the augment for negation armor. Like, it's cool. Like, okay, you get to become invulnerable and not die, but you got to deal with this bleed, this slash proc. That's okay with me. But then you have like Ember where her immolation gauge should really work more like Gauss's battery. But I think at the time when they reworked Ember, or like how her 4 and her 3 have to obey line of sight, wherein there's other way stronger nukes in the game that don't. And I think there was like this period of time where they were really scared of power creep, and at this point, I think they've just said F it. I mean, look at incarnate weapons. Incarnate weapons are like just absolutely disgustingly powerful. So I think that at this point they've kind of like there is no avoiding power creep. Like it's here, right? So hopefully, like they continue doing these reworks. I think there's a lot of frames that could benefit from something because this isn't really that crazy. Like these are all basically abilities that Inaros had already. They kind of just got rid of Devour, split his 4 into 2, and added a bunch of quality of life. So it wasn't really like all that much extra, which I think is kind of what they should do with reworks moving forward, honestly. Um, I know like they don't want to do reworks like the Vauban rework or the Ember rework because those were straight up like brand new frames. Like those were like more or less completely changing all of their abilities. And I don't think that they want to do that because that takes a lot of time and it's really hard. Um, It's like basically it's making a new frame effectively. So I really hope they keep doing these kinds of reworks, and I hope we see more reworks like this and less like this. So this is the other um, dev workshop that got posted. This is the quality of life stuff. So there's some Loki changes. So decoy is going to scale up a bit, right? That's cool. Um, switch teleport is like slightly less terrible. And then so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to the augments. Where is it? Oh my goodness. Wait, I thought they're okay. Maybe I'm crazy. They're not in here. Anyways, there's going to be a new augment for Loki where like his decoy like applies status effects and stuff, and it's like okay, like maybe that'll make decoy useful, but I think there is a serious problem with Warframe right now fixing frames with augments. Like it's to the point where a large portion of Warframes have augments that are basically required. Like Frost. Like Frost is really good now, but you have to use two augments. Styanax went from being pretty okay to absolutely insane because of an augment. It's like I think a really good example of an augment is Fused Reservoir. Like Fused Reservoir, it just changes the functionality of the ability and adds quality of life, right? Like I think that is a good augment. Um, I think an augment like Razorwing Blitz, which every single Titania build, unless you're like an absolute psychopath, which is fine, you can mod however you want. But if you're like using Titania but not using Razorwing, which at that point, why would you play Titania? But every Titania build using Razorwing uses Razorwing Blitz. So like, why wouldn't you just make Razorwing Blitz her passive? So that, it's just like I really, really hope I know that they've been doing these quality of life passes for a while. Um so I hope we get like a augment quality of life patch where like they go through all the augments, they look at the augments that are like basically required for frames to function. Like Styanax's new Overguard augment. Like Styanax is a completely different frame when you have that Overguard augment. He goes from being like kind of okay, but like a little squishy and can just like randomly die to literally a god and making his entire team unkillable. So, I really hope that they do that. Now, as far as this quality of life dev workshop, I think these changes are okay. I mean, it lets you like use decoy at least. I don't really know the use cases in which you would want to use decoy. Maybe with the augment, it could be good. That's like the only thing I could think of. Switch teleport is like really, really, it's just not super awesome. Like, I don't know. The only thing that I use this for is to fix the terrible movement pathing on the drones in Plains of Eidolon when there's the whatever the event. So this ability is just a little weird. It like both of these abilities just don't like really work that well in modern Warframe. Like decoy might like this might make Loki pretty okay at like defense stuff. Um I mean radial disarm is like not bad for defense missions, so maybe you can combine radial disarm with the new decoy to like, be a pretty good like CC defense frame. I mean, obviously his stealth is like his best ability. His stealth is pretty good. It's like, it's one of the better stealth options, I think. It has like a pretty good base duration. It would be nice if it had like a little bit more like functionality to it. But at least they're trying, I guess. Maybe we'll get like some incremental buffs to Loki until he's in a good spot. That's kind of what happened to Titania. Like there was a point where Titania wasn't very good, and she just got like really little changes for like a year. Like there was probably like a year and a half where Titania just got like little buffs. Every patch, she just got like a little buff. Same thing happened with Garuda actually. They just got these like teeny tiny buffs like every patch, and now they're awesome. Both of those frames are super strong. So, maybe they can do the same thing with Loki. Okay, now Eclipse. So this is like good and bad news. So this is good for Mirage players, bad for everyone else. So I love Mirage. She's actually one of my most played Warframes. I think she's like a really cool uh, design. I love all of her abilities. I think that Explosive Legerdemain is one of the funniest abilities in the entire game. That's another great example of a good augment. Like, if you don't want to use that build, you can just not use the augment. But you could still use her too for like some CC and incidental damage. But if you want to like use this weird different playstyle, then you can use Explosive Legerdemain. That's a good augment. Um, so I'm really glad that they're just going with the light dark toggle with Eclipse. So that's really good. Um, I am glad that it they're not they did nerf the damage reduction a little bit. They kept I think there was a post where they originally were going to make Eclipse additive weapon damage rather than multiplicative weapon damage, which has kind of been like Mirage's entire shtick forever. So now, most frames damage reduction goes up to 90%. I don't think there's any is is Mesa's 95 on Shatter Shield, but that's not everything. That's just on ranged projectiles. So, um, yeah, so I think this is fine. That's cool. I really like that you can consistently actually use the damage reduction. Like if I'm playing a explosive Legerdemain build, I don't like really care about the weapon damage as much. I'm more getting my damage from like explosive Legerdemain and maybe like Prism. So it's actually kind of nice to be able to switch to Lunar Eclipse and have the damage reduction consistently, especially with shield gating. That because this will stack with like shields, natural 25% DR, stack multiplicatively. Um, so yeah, I think that that's really nice. Um, Now here's the bad part. Basically, Eclipse is dead. Um, as far as a Helminth goes, Eclipse is dead. No one is going to pick Eclipse. Okay, let me put this. Eclipse is dead if you want damage. Um, there's zero reason to ever pick Eclipse over Roar, ever. If you just want to do damage. So their rationale here is, which they literally say it. Why would you ever pick this? Um, because you have the defensive option. So I actually think I'm going to use Eclipse. I don't think I'm going to use it for damage ever through Helminth, but there is nothing in Helminth that is just damage reduction, right? Like we have Pillage, which is close because it gets you shields back, but there's nothing that just gives you damage reduction. People kind of like get pseudo damage reduction through Gloom or through whatchamacallit. You can kind of do it with Null Star, but that is like really annoying to mod for, and it doesn't work with shields. So I actually think this is a really good change for the defensive part of the ability because like for Banshee, like I don't really like running Gloom on Banshee because you have to like mod for efficiency when you don't really want to do that on her. Like I'd rather just have more strength and range and not have to worry about efficiency. Um, so if I can run Lunar Eclipse and have damage reduction alongside shield gating, I would way rather do that than run Gloom. So I think I'm going to be trying this out a lot on a lot of frames that could use the damage reduction. and like use it, specifically with shield gating. So I actually like this change. I wish this was a little higher because like they even say roar affects abilities and acts like a faction mod for damage over time. So like I I think that making solar eclipse the same as roar is like, because of the way roar works, this isn't really the same as roar. This is way worse than roar. So I think if they made this like 50% or like something like that, that would be like a little better. Um, at least make it competitive. But I do think having the defensive option, maybe make this like 80%, like, but I'm not going to get too greedy. Like 75% damage reduction is still pretty good. The unexpected change is the prism changes. So now it's just always going to have. So for anybody who doesn't know, Prism used to be really broken because you would basically shotgun it. The blind would go through walls. So you would just like build max range and shotgun your Prism and blind literally the entire map. And it was like it basically turned off the AI for the entire map for your whole squad. Now at this time, like Overguard didn't exist, stuff like that. So like it was giga broken. Um, then they nerfed that, so Prism didn't really do that good of damage. So it was kind of just like a meme ability. Like nobody ever used it. There was like one point where people realized there was like a bug where like how fast you moved like made Prism do more damage. So they were using Prism and Reeve, I think it was, to go like really fast with the Prism augment from Conclave that you can get through Nightwave, and it was just a total meme. Like it was funny, but like it was not really like realistic to actually use. Now Prism actually does pretty good damage. Like I use Mirage, like I like getting Mirage for like the circuit and stuff because you can just chuck your Prism out and it does like a lot of damage. Like it is very respectable AoE damage. So I think that, it's not going to like randomly do less damage because you're in like a shadow or something. So that's really nice. So more consistent. And it actually has some synergy with Eclipse. So you can either get more damage or more efficiency. This is like this is really cool. Like this is really, really, really cool. So what I'm looking forward to is now, because like Mirage's first three abilities are very cheap, but Prism is a uh, energy over time, right? So it was hard to run a build with like max AoE ability damage with like explosive ledger domain and Prism because it was hard to keep up your energy. Now it's going to be way more manageable because you can just sit in Lunar Eclipse, you have damage reduction, you have some kind of like, damage redirection with your clones are making more mines, you have your explosive ledger domain going off, your prism costs way less energy. So if this is calculated after efficiency, you could just throw Streamline on your build and have 80% efficiency on Prism. That's crazy. It's going to cost like I wonder if you could literally make this cost nothing. That would be insane. So I think these Mirage change as a person who likes Mirage a lot, and I like her not just as like a weapons platform. I like all of her abilities. This is like I'm really hyped for this. So I'm extremely excited for the Mirage changes. Unfortunately, if you only used Eclipse because of Helminth, sorry, it's kind of a dead ability now. Just use Roar. Um, it's also like this is pretty cool. I like the like bad luck protection they added in. It's they're getting much smarter when they're adding stuff like this in. So I think this is a much more consistent and useful passive. So Gara was like already a pretty good frame. Like you do spam abilities a lot. So I think that this will just be even better for Gara. So Gara will be a little stronger when she's already pretty good. Nourish, I am really surprised that this did not get nerfed more. Um, Frankly, this is like they are barely like they are just very gently tapping this ability. This is like not even a nerf. Frankly, I would argue that this is actually a buff because you don't want viral damage. You just want the viral status effect. So this actually is better because, for example, on Titania's Dex Pixia, if you get a 75% viral damage bonus, so part of the reason why I like using Precision Intensify on Titania, even though my build has Nourish, is I don't want Viral to have too much damage because then it will override the damage weighting for my Dexpixia, and I won't get as many toxin procs, which means I won't. It's harder to full strip with corrosive, blah blah blah. So I actually like this. This is actually kind of a buff. And then only, I mean, they nerfed this by like what, like 20% or something, you know? So like that's really low. Like I think that this is still going to be an absolutely incredible ability. It's still worse on Grendel than it is on everybody else. Because yes, these numbers are a little lower if you're not Grendel, and it doesn't have the heal if you're not Grendel, but you can also use it without having a something in your gut, which is way better than what Grendel has, which, oh, you can use this really cool ability after you use your one. This doesn't have that restriction. So it's still really awkward. I still think the or the Helminth version of Nourish is better, even though it has lower numbers. And this is not even a nerf. This is like a light tap. This is definitely going to still be the best Helminth ability. There's no doubt in my mind. This is definitely going to be the most popular. It might be like slightly less popular, but if anything, it actually might go up because they nerfed Eclipse so much. Because the second most popular helmet ability was Eclipse, and that just got butchered. So Nourish might actually go up significantly. Um, so yeah, so this one is they added damage attenuation and it's like easier to see their weak points, blah blah blah. It's whatever, like it's cool, I guess. So okay, I really like these changes actually. Um, I think that this is really really nice. So I personally found it pretty difficult to identify the location of a demolist purely from sound. I'm sure there's other people that felt that way too. Um, so what I would do is I would just build like an insane amount of enemy radar and just have the tabbed version of the map open so you could see them coming from farther away, but I don't really like playing like that. So I really like this where like whenever you hear it, you like see the marker popping in and out, and then once you actually see it, it's like permanently there. So I really like that. That's really cool. So it's always nice when they do that. Now this is like the most unexpected change, but like this is awesome. I'm so excited. And I'm sure like I mean every fashion frame is endgame, right? So like this is probably one of the biggest. I think this is probably the change that people are the most excited for, and we didn't even know it was coming. Because I like, most of these Warframes, and it kind of stinks. Like Avara is like, I think Avara is one of the coolest looking frames in the whole game. All these frames look cool. I love Avara though. So, and Varuna's really cool too. So like, being able to actually see your really cool, Avara fashion while you're in a mission is gonna be like really nice. Um, so yeah, so that's really sweet. I like that a lot. Obviously, like, they're adjusting the drop tables, based on feedback. I think the Omnia Void Fissures sound pretty cool. So like, sometimes you want to just like go chill in like a fissure. This is kind of what I do for like um once I'm done with my Netcher cells and I'm done with my Archon hunt, and like you kind of do your weekly stuff, fissures are kind of like the best thing to do. So now that you can do like, void floods or whatever, void cascade as an Omnia fissure, that's really cool. Like this is going to be a sick mission to do. Like that's going to be very lucrative. So I think this might become so doing like, Steel Path, Void Cascade, Omnia fissures could become like, the new best thing to do. And then, we get in some more Steel Paths. That's pretty cool. So, I would like some more changes to some frames soon, but I'm not going to get greedy because they are, reworking an Aros and adding some buffs to like Loki, even though I don't think they're going to help too much, but at least it's making his abilities usable. That's good. Um, so yeah, I think that they're definitely moving in the right direction. I like how they handled all the Mirage stuff personally. I really like how they handled all this. I think they didn't go too overboard. The only thing is like maybe if this was a little higher, the damage version for Helmet, if this was like 50%, I think that would be a little better. But that's the only thing that I have like any issue with, honestly. So once again, I think we're looking at a really, really good update. Um, I think Warframe went through a little bit of a lull where they were biting off more than they could chew, but I think Reb and the team have been doing a just absolutely amazing job. Like Warframe patches have just been like banger after banger for like probably over a year now. Um, so yeah, really, really awesome job. Team's doing great. And I will also say I did start playing the Soulframe Alpha, and I'm really having a lot of fun there. It's a very different experience from Warframe, and I think that Steve and that team are also doing a really great job. So I'm hoping that will, go into open beta sometime soon, hopefully in the next year or so. Um, I don't remember exactly what's in the NDA for that, but it is really fun. So yeah, so thanks for watching. Hopefully everybody enjoys the patch. I'm really looking forward to it, and talk to you then. See ya.